That jar of honey in your cupboard might not tell you where it came from, and neither can the brand that sold it. DNA testing on UK supermarket honey found almost every retailer sample suspicious. Only honey straight from a beekeeper came back clean. The nostalgic name and pure and natural wording on the front might be covering for 2 words hiding in small print on the back. Today I'm checking 9 jars carrying that print, then showing 3 that name, where every drop came from. The worst jar is not the cheapest one. It is the nation's favourite. Quick standard before we start, because this gets glossed over constantly. Real honey is either single origin, meaning it is traceable back to one country or one beekeeper, or it is a blend, meaning it came from more than one country, and the law does not require the label to say which ones. That is not a rumour, that is just how the labelling rules actually work. Independent DNA-based testing sent to a specialist lab last year found the overwhelming majority of supermarket honey samples suspicious, while every single sample bought directly from a UK beekeeper came back clean. Keep that gap in mind as we go, because it is the whole story here, from the cheapest jar to the most expensive one on this list. The nation's favourite honey brand is on this list, and it is not sitting anywhere near the bottom. Number 9, Aldi Everyday Essentials Clear Honey. This is the cheapest jar in the whole lineup, well under £1 in most stores, bought on autopilot as a kitchen basic nobody thinks twice about tossing in the trolley. Turn it around and you will find the honey equivalent of produce of EU and non-EU countries, which sounds specific and is actually the opposite, tucked in small type below the barcode where almost nobody bothers looking. That phrase legally means the honey could be from almost anywhere on the planet, and in practice it usually means wherever was cheapest to buy that particular week. You are not being lied to here. You are just not being told anything useful at all. That is not a bargain. That is the most honest-looking cheap jar on this whole shelf, because at least it is not pretending to be something it is not. The next one has a supermarket's own trusted name behind it, and shoppers trust that more than they probably should. Number 8, Sainsbury's Clear Honey. Own brand basics get grabbed off the shelf without a second thought, mostly because the retailer's own name is doing the reassuring for you before you've even glanced at the jar. This one is labelled as using a blend of honeys from more than one country, blend of non-EU honeys, printed right there on the back in plain checkable text. The supermarket's own trusted name is standing in for a guarantee it never actually makes anywhere on the packaging. That's not full transparency. That's a blank space sitting exactly where the answer should be. That's a quiet, own brand admission most shoppers walk straight past. The next one comes with a taste complaint attached on top of it. Number 7, Asda Runny Honey. Rock bottom price, and some of the packaging around it even claims full traceability back to the beekeeper. Traceable to a beekeeper and traceable to a country are 2 completely different promises, and this jar really only makes one of them properly. It carries the same blend of non-EU honey's status as the rest of this list so far, and shoppers who've compared it side by side against proper single-origin honey have described it as syrupy, with a strange, almost artificial aftertaste lingering afterward. The texture is already telling you what the label confirms elsewhere on the jar. That's a budget jar, at least being upfront about being budget. The next one dresses that exact same problem up as natural instead. Number 6, Co-op Clear Honey. Clear and Natural do a lot of visual work on an own label jar like this one, the kind of clean, simple, almost minimalist packaging that reads as wholesome before you've read a single word of the ingredient panel. Own label honey at this general price point typically carries the same blend status as the budget jars we've already covered, with no single country named anywhere on the front of the label. It's worth checking the current jar for yourself next time you're in store, because exact wording like this can shift between batches. A clean label design is not the same thing as a clean supply chain behind it. That's a flower on the label, and a nice font doing all the convincing. The next one reaches for the supermarket's own top tier instead. Number 5. Morrisons Premium Own Label Honey. The top tier of any supermarket's own range is priced like it should mean something more, like you're finally paying extra for actual proof instead of just a fancier sounding name on the jar. Own label ranges at this pricing tier don't automatically come with single origin status attached, and it's worth checking the jar directly rather than assuming the higher shelf price buys you a genuinely different supply chain underneath it. That's the trap with premium own label tiers generally across pretty much every supermarket that has one. You are paying more money for exactly the same basic promise as the cheap jar 2 shelves down. That's not a top shelf guarantee, that's just a top shelf price tag doing the convincing. The next one has been sitting on shelves under the same name for decades. Number 4. Gale's Clear Honey. This is an old, familiar British honey name, the kind that sounds like it's been sitting quietly in a village shop since long before the supermarkets existed. Heritage in the name does not automatically translate into heritage in the actual jar, and it's genuinely worth checking the current label for single origin status rather than assuming otherwise, just because the branding feels old-fashioned. A name that sounds like it hasn't changed in decades can still be repackaging whatever blend happened to be cheapest to buy that particular season. The name is doing the time travelling here, the honey inside isn't. The next one hides behind an even older trademark, on an even bigger supermarket shelf. Number 3. Tesco Stockwell and Comte Clear Honey. Since 1924 is printed right across the front in confident lettering, a genuinely old Tesco trademark named after T.E. Stockwell, the tea supplier Tesco's own founder first bought from back when the company was starting out. This jar carries produce of EU and non-EU countries wording, tucked around the side of the label, well away from the nostalgic front branding, all at a price of about 75 pence. The oldest sounding name on this whole list is doing the most work to distract from the newest, vaguest supply chain sitting quietly behind it. That's not 1924. That's this year's cheapest available blend, wearing a 100-year-old name to sell it. The next one skips the nostalgia trick entirely and goes straight for the word pure instead. Number 2. Rouse Squeezy Pure and Natural Honey. Pure and Natural sits in bold, confident letters right across the front of the bottle, exactly the kind of phrase that makes you stop scanning the shelf and just grab it. But pure and unblended are two completely different questions, and this bottle is currently labelled a blend of non-EU honeys on the back, in the same small print as everything else on this list. Pure can still mean nothing artificial was added, while the honey itself came from several undisclosed countries mixed together in one bottle. The front label only answers one of those two questions, and it's not the one you actually care about standing in the aisle. Pure and natural isn't the same question as where's it from. This bottle only answers one of them. That's a front label doing selective honesty. The final one is the name almost every household in the country already trusts without question. Number 1. Rouse Original Squeezy Honey, the UK's best-selling honey. Tony Rousey started collecting honey from his own Oxfordshire hives back in the 1930s, and that origin story has carried the brand for decades, right up to being the single most recognisable jar on supermarket shelves in the country today. Here is the part that should genuinely bother you. This bottle currently carries the exact same wording as the cheapest jar on this entire list, a blend of non-EU honeys. Decades of a beekeeper's origin story printed proudly on the label do not make what is actually inside the bottle single origin, no matter how long the company has been trading. The best-selling honey in the country and a jar costing a fraction of the price are answering the origin question in exactly the same way. They are not answering it at all. If the nation's favourite cannot tell you where it is actually from, here is what it genuinely looks like when a jar can. Okay, 9 jars down, and you've probably noticed by now that none of this was really about price. A 99 pence jar and the nation's favourite jar, both costing wildly different amounts, can carry the identical blank label on the back. There's a way to check this before you buy, and it's just 2 words hiding in small print most people never bother reading properly. Blend or a single named country. Here are 3 jars that actually commit to the second one. Buy 1 Rose British Oxfordshire Wildflower Honey, around £4.50 for 225 grams at Waitrose. Same brand as the 2 Rose jars we just covered a moment ago, completely different promise sitting behind this one. This jar is labelled Produce of the UK. A single name country, not a blend of wherever happened to be convenient that month. Same name on the jar, same company making it. Completely different answer behind it once you turn it around. Buy 2 Tesco Finest English Set Honey, around £4.50. The same supermarket that sells the 75 pence Stockwell Mystery Blend also stocks this one, produced and packed in the UK from bees foraging on native English blossom, rather than an unnamed blend of countries. You just have to walk straight past the nostalgia shelf near the front to find the Honest jar sitting further along the aisle. Buy 3 Black Bee Honey British Summer Honey, sold at booths. This is the gold standard on this entire list. 100% British, genuinely single origin honey, and every single jar is stamped with the name of the actual beekeeper and the actual location that produced it, not just a country, not just a region, an actual name and an actual place. This is what Trust the Label looks like when the label names an actual person instead of a decades-old story. 9 jars on this list lean on a nostalgic name, a reassuring own brand badge, or the words pure and natural to do the convincing, while the actual country of origin stays unnamed in small print most shoppers never stop to read. 3 jars prove that naming a single country, or better yet a single beekeeper, is entirely possible on a supermarket shelf, and it has almost nothing to do with how much you're willing to spend at the till. This isn't just a honey problem either. The same trick, a comforting name up front and a unnamed blend in small print on the back, shows up on olive oil, on balsamic vinegar, on pretty much anything sitting on a shelf where the word origin is supposed to mean something specific and checkable. Once you learn to check for a named country instead of a nostalgic story, you start noticing that same blank space almost everywhere you shop, aisle after aisle. The front label sells you a feeling. The back label, in 2 or 3 words most people never stop to actually read, tells you what you're really buying. Next time you're stood in that aisle, turn the jar around before the name on the front makes the decision for you.